Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports for today's roundup of the third round of the Currie Cup. A very interesting round and some big results which are having quite a big effect on the log and on the tournament as a whole. Before we look any further, please do subscribe to the channel, bottom right hand there. We are really pushing for 400 subscribers by the end of the year, so please do support the channel. Smash a like on the video as well, jump in the comments and let me know what you took away from the weekend, what you thought was impressive and moments that really stood out for you. But if you're looking at the weekend as a whole, Friday night started with the Western Province getting a bonus point victory against the Pumas. Maybe not the Western Province is still not, maybe not the best performance. There's still room for improvement, but on the back of two losses, it was very important for them to put in a performance and get a result, and that's exactly what they did. And that's what Tia Khaleesi alluded to. He said that they needed to respond after those opening, those two games, which were quite disappointing against the Bulls and the Lions. But the Western Province going back to winning ways, which is very important because they managed to stay ahead of the Lions just thanks to that victory, thanks to that bonus point on Friday. So but now the Western Province need to take that and build on it. You know, you can't just be beating a Pumas, a Greek, with even the Cheetahs. They need to go and start beating the likes of the Bulls, the Sharks, and the Lions. Then the Bulls took on the Sharks on Saturday, travelled down to Durban, where the Sharks edged them 32-29, and the Sharks deserved the victory there. And I think the Bulls will be frustrated because I think they had moments where they could have won the game. But you look at especially the fly half battle between Mornay Steyn and Curwin Bosch. Curwin Bosch won that battle hands down. He kicked better than Steyn. He was better in open play. And the Sharks deserved the victory there. I mean, you look at Curwin Bosch. He kicked a massive penalty. He had that cross kick for Jalpenka for the try. He just kicked very, very well. Mornay Steyn, on the other hand, missed a penalty in the first half, one which I think you'd probably back him to get, and then crucially missed the penalty well into extra time, which would have leveled the scores. And a draw wouldn't have been a bad result because it was a game where both sides just had their moments, and it was just it ebbed and flowed the entire game with each side having chances to dominate, and none of them really sort of snatching that opportunity to win the game. But credit to the Sharks because I think they were the better side. They were much more clinical. Their execution was much better than the Bulls. The Bulls had opportunities, but every time the Bulls scored points, they regather and their restarts were terrible, and they kept allowing the Sharks back into the game. So the Bulls would score a try and be like, cool, we've gone 9 or 7 points ahead. All you need to do is regather, kick down, and then try and convert into more points. But they didn't do that. The Sharks kept putting on the pressure. As soon as there was a restart, the Sharks were all over the Bulls, winning a penalty, finding a try, finding a way back into the game every single time. And then they crucially scored a try to take the lead. And suddenly the Bulls were playing catch-up, and the Bulls just couldn't do it in the end. So credit to the Sharks because they really did make a big statement. And the Bulls, as I said, the Sharks were the better side. So I think the Bulls will look at the game and think that they had opportunities to win it. I think especially in that early stage of the second half, they were dominating the Sharks, and they had a chance to try and sort of stretch a lead and try and put the game to bed. But they didn't take it. And the Sharks just were very patient and waited for the opportunity and just kept themselves in the game. And that's what's so important. You keep yourself in the game for as long as possible. Absolutely anything can happen. And it's very good for the competition because the log has now sort of been blown up a bit. And suddenly means that the Bulls, which threaten to be front runners and right at the top there and everybody else trying to catch up, suddenly one loss like that, and the rest of the sides are looking, you know what, they can actually be beaten. And, we played pretty well against the Sharks, who then beat the Bulls. So suddenly, it just makes the other teams believe that they can start taking on the other side. And then finally, the Cheetahs versus the Lions, a bit of a grudge match, an opportunity for the Lions to make a big statement because with SA Rugby going and backing the Lions, Bulls, Sharks, and Western Province, or Stormers, in the Pro 16 next year, the Cheetahs responded pretty poorly to that, as you would imagine, and sat there saying, you know what, we were pretty good in the Pro 14. Why are we being pushed to the side? Why are we not being given the opportunity to go and try and prove that we are within the top 4 best sides? They said, why don't you use Super Rugby on log? Let's use this log as a barometer. But the Lions ran out, especially that 50 minutes section after half time, where the Lions, who started pretty poorly, sort of blitzed the Cheetahs a bit. So if you look at the beginning of the game, I mean, when Francois Steyn is knocking over a 64-meter penalty within the first 10 minutes, you do start to think, right, well, the Cheetahs are here, because him and Skuman were kicking very well, and the Lions' discipline was costing them. The Lions grew into the game, though, and eventually got a try through Willem Alberts, who was just so powerful out the entire match. But they went into half-time, and they had a bit of a lead, and what was important for them was to start strongly in the second half, because that's where the Lions have struggled. They started very poorly and kind of had to wait a while to square into halves and games. But that start of the second half, they ran in 3 tries, and suddenly the game was almost put to bed immediately. Some fantastic work there, and team tries. I mean, look at them. Most of them were sort of on the counter attack, but lots of players that were involved within the build-up. You know, Vince Tuka had a very good run. Jack Creel had a very good run. Steon Pino did very well. I mean, Steve Satola, Yanni Duplessis combining. Alton Yankees was very good, very instrumental. Willem Alberts as well. So I mean, Andre Warner was scored 2, but it was very much a team effort where you saw. You don't want to say vintage because they only went in sort of last year, but kind of the lines that made the world sit up, where they were playing very good rugby, throwing the ball around, willing to take those risks. That was back yesterday. And whilst the Cheetahs had a bit of a resurgence and grew into the game and grew into the half and pushed the Lions towards the end, ultimately it was just too much to do. And the Lions' defense deserves a lot of credit for standing up and ensuring that the Cheetahs didn't manage to get themselves quite into the game itself. And we're good in that they're trying to avoid any cards, which is not quite the same case in the Bulls versus the Sharks. But if you look at what happened as a result of this weekend, that is how the log currently stands. So the Bulls, 33 points, but the Sharks, with a game in hand, are on 28 points. So if they win that game in hand, suddenly they can go at 1 point behind the Bulls, if not level them, if they can get a bonus point. So a huge result lost this weekend in terms of the grand scheme of the tournament. And then the Western Province as well, that bonus point keeping them ahead of the Lions. Points difference, Lions do ace them by 1 point. So it's very, very close. But what there is there's a gap between 4th and 5th. So the Cheetahs now 8 points behind the Lions. Lions still to play the Pumas as well. So, you know, you'd look and then say the Lions are going to probably get at least sort of 29 points out of the competition, even if they then lose the games, some of the bigger games. So the Cheetahs now have to sit there and say, right, well, we need to get to 30. How do we get to 30? Can we get to 30? You know, and if you look at the fixtures for next weekend, on Friday the Cheetahs take on the Pumas, in which case the Cheetahs have got a good chance, need to go out and get a bonus point victory, get themselves 22 points, with the Lions taking on the Sharks on the Saturday, and say to the Lions, right, well, if you lose, we're right behind you. The Bulls take on the Griquas on Saturday, which means the Bulls will have a chance to try and extend their lead, so that when the Sharks take the field, they'll sit there saying, right, well, the Bulls are quite far ahead. We're under a lot of pressure here. Whereas the Lions will be looking at the Cheetahs and saying, they're going to be behind us. We need to target the Sharks game. It is a home game for the Lions, so that will hopefully, for them, hopefully play in their favor. After that, after Christmas, we then have the Griquas taking on the Western Province, Bulls taking on Lions, Cheetahs versus Sharks. So, you know, some big games here. Bulls versus Lions on Boxing Day, Cheetahs versus Sharks. The weekend after that, we have, you know, Cheetahs versus Western Province, Bulls versus Pumas, and then Sharks versus Province is the last group game there. So there's a lot of big games in there. And I look at particularly that sort of Boxing Day, 26th, 27th round, with the Bulls taking on the Lions and the Cheetahs taking on the Sharks, and the Western Province taking on the Griquas away in Kimberley. That would probably be a very decisive weekend in terms of how the competition will eventually unfold. But so much to play for still, so much still to do. So please do keep it locked on Forever Sports, a live watch along next weekend. We will be doing the Lions versus Sharks Saturday, 7 o'clock live on the channel. Obviously previews, team of the week from this week, takeaways, all that coming up over the next few days. So keep it locked on Forever Sports. Subscribe, bottom right hand, smash a like on the video, jump in the comments. My name is Steven, and I will chat to you very, very soon.